I'm here in beautiful St. Lambert, Montreal, downtown Montreal. Uh, well, uh, in the South Shore, St. Lambert on the South Shore, um, and as you can see, it's mid-September, and the leaves on the trees are already changing. And I've recently concluded a settlement with a company I used to work for. I'd like to tell you about it. We're going to be talking about a rather difficult subject, and that's pride. When we talk about pride, you have to understand that when I talk about pride, I don't necessarily mean the LGBTQ community. And when I talk about the LGBTQ community, I don't necessarily mean pride. And as I go along in this discussion, I will try to keep those distinctions clear in my own head as well. But So the LGBTQ community, or technically the LGBTQ2SIPAA community, but here in Canada, the last time I checked, it's only recognized as the LGBTQ2S, according to the lobbyists in the government. But Pride here in Canada isn't really an organization. It's a grassroots movement. There's a pride organization for the Toronto Pride Parade, or there's a pride organization for different initiatives. And lots of people are talking about pride and the pride flags and so on. But the pride movement, there's no there's no official body. You can't call them up. You can't write a letter to the leader of Pride or anything like that. It's not really a thing officially, which makes it difficult if you wanted to say ask them what their intentions were. So when I want to ask questions about Pride among the LGBTQ community and so on, or among any of the supporters of Pride, it's funny because as soon as I try to ask a question, I don't even have to say what the question is, but the idea that I should want to ask a question, I immediately become public enemy number one. And it's frustrating that in our world today, if anybody has any questions or if anybody wants to have any discussions, if anybody has a different point of view, it becomes instantly an us versus them scenario. You must be against us. But that's not really true. The idea of wanting to think independently, the idea of wanting to ask questions, the idea of wanting to ask how something should actually work or who they actually represent, those seem like legitimate questions to me, but they're not questions I'm supposed to ask. So, as it turns out, I was thinking about, what pride would actually mean, and I asked some of the LGBTQ community members if Pride had ever asked them what their needs were, what their wants were, if they had a voice in Pride, what they would want to say. And what is Pride all about? Well, it's about rights. It's about awareness, is what they say first. It's about awareness of the LGBTQ. Well, awareness of what? Well, awareness of their rights. Well, okay, awareness of their rights for what exactly? Because they have all the rights of any other Canadian citizen. So what rights are we talking about? And so then when you start getting into specifics, it gets really muddy, because it's all very easy to wave a flag and go, oh yeah, supporting the LGBTQ community, that's a good thing, right? And I don't disagree. But what happens is the vast majority of people supporting Pride, I mean, the optics of it, just because you picked up a flag and started waving it around, do people really know what it is about Pride that they actually support? Well, support rights. What rights? Rights for who? Rights for what? Because I can tell you from my exposure to, say, gay men, I can't speak for a lot, but I've had quite a bit of exposure to gay men and had gay men as friends and so on. And they don't really get involved with pride. They like to just, leave it. They don't really want special washrooms. They don't want to have any special identity or anything like that. They don't want to walk around wearing pins identifying their pronouns or anything like that. They would rather just be on the down low, and they're men and they want to remain men, and they want to be able to mix with other men and so on, and they would rather not be exposed in any, you know, grandiose fashion. So talking about rights for people is difficult. I mean, even at the best of times, when you have a group of people, anybody who's worked in organizing an event or anything like that, you have all these people gathered together, and presumably all have the same goal and the same movement, but getting everybody to agree at the same time on anything is almost impossible. So the idea that Pride truly represents the LGBTQ community, I think, is misleading. So, but the optics are that everybody supports it. They don't really know what they support, but everybody supports it. And so, because the vast majority of the politically correct motivation that is our world today supports Pride, gives the impression that if you want to do something under the Pride banner, then all of those people support it. So somebody in some company wants to have a Pride flag put up in the parking lot, or a school or something like that. 6 people in that school decided they wanted to have a Pride flag in the parking lot because it's a Pride flag and because it's a Pride movement. Therefore, all of the people who support Pride must support this initiative. But all of the people who supported Pride have no idea what's going on. It's just these 6 people wanted to put up a Pride flag. And okay, because it's a Pride flag, one can presume that the Pride movement would probably support it, I guess. But do they really have any idea what they're supporting? So recently, I worked in a company that supported Pride. It's one of those banner stores that is known for being an inclusive employer, and the poster child for inclusive employment and so on in Canada. And I worked for them for a long time, almost 15 years, and I was fired. I've recently settled on a lawsuit with them, and so I can't really tell you a lot about that. But should it really be necessary for me to take my rights to legal steps and seek the help of a lawyer and so on, and pressure them into honoring my rights just because I chose to ask a question? So the story goes that because my store supported Pride, and I'd been with the company a long time and it never really bothered me, but the support for Pride had grown to such an enormous, overwhelming degree that it was rather saccharinely ridiculous. And a lot of people in the store, including myself, and because people knew my position, they sort of expressed their opinions to me too, and said, this is freaking ridiculous, but you couldn't really say anything outright because the company said, well, you can support Pride or you can just not say anything. Okay, well, that's fine, except what if you weren't working for the company for 15 years? I felt that I had a position of some respect in the company, and 40 plus or so award badges, customer service badges, and 15 years in the company. I had risen to increased salary rate, and I enjoyed a certain amount of autonomy within the company. And I thought, if I were to say something that, I would get a certain amount of respect for it. But if you were like the demure little Muslim girl on the front cash or something like that, and you didn't really feel comfortable with pride because of your religious convictions, you wouldn't want to say anything, because like 80 to 90% of the people are walking around with badges identifying their pronouns, and colored flags on there, and there's colored banners all over the floors and above the cash registers and everything like that. And more often, well, more to the point, in our employee lounge, in our personal space where we're to eat our lunch and feel comfortable, there's information placards and tablecloths with rainbows on it, and all this kind of stuff. And it's really, really overwhelming, to the extent that it occurred to me that if I were, by my religious conviction, against pride, and I'm not really, but if I were that, I would feel very uncomfortable. The intimidation has become, the pendulum has swung the other way. Those people that were intimidated have now become the persons doing the intimidation. And I thought that was unfair. So if you really liked what we were talking about and liked what I was saying, then you want to keep in touch with any updates, then hit subscribe. If you really hated what I was talking about and you want to disagree with me at every opportunity, then hit subscribe. If you don't think that any of this has any relevance to you whatsoever, then I guess you're probably not going to continue the conversation. But that would be sad, because we're talking about the entire human race here. So I hope you'll join me as we continue looking into the various things that separate us and how we can maybe defeat those obstacles. Thank you for listening.